They say memories soften with time, like how fabric frays at the edge after too many seasons in the sun. But this memory, it's sharp. It hasn't dulled. It clings to the walls of my mind like ivy to stone. It was the summer I turned 16. The last summer I ever felt young. The house came to me by death. A great uncle I'd never met, whose name my parents said only in passing, left me the key and the deed to a sloping-roofed home in a countryside so quiet, it felt like the world had forgotten it. It stood at the edge of a clearing, crooked and gray, its shutters slightly ajar like tired eyelids. I thought it beautiful in the way a ghost might be, once seen but not truly known. I arrived alone. My parents were distant. They thought the trip would be good for me, to clear my head. No one says the word trauma aloud, not when it's fresh. I said goodbye at the train station, and their car was already halfway down the hill when I looked back. The key was cold. Brass, ornate, with teeth like a bite. The lock gave in with a groan. Inside, the house smelled of wood, dried herbs, and silence. Dust motes floated like lazy spirits in the air. Everything was still intact, shelves of old books, a clock that ticked too slowly, porcelain dolls that had surely outlived everyone who ever touched them. But what struck me first, what made the air tighten just a bit, was the mirror by the staircase. It was far too tall for the narrow wall it leaned on. Its surface seemed slightly warped, not cracked but uneven. Like the reflection was thinking for itself. I chalked it up to age and humidity. The days were slow, heavy with heat. I spent time reading my uncle's old journals, though most of them were filled with mundane records, gardening notes, weather patterns, observations about local birds. The villagers nearby kept their distance. Not unfriendly, just cautious. The kind of quiet you find in places where secrets have weight. It was on the third day that I saw them. From the attic window, which gave a view of the northern path, I noticed two figures walking slowly down the hill. Dressed in long, dark clothes despite the stifling sun. One taller than the other, both with hoods that concealed their faces. They stopped near the fence. Not at the gate. Not on the path. Just, standing, as if they had no place to be and all the time in the world to be there. I watched them from behind the curtain. My breath caught, not from fear exactly, but something older than fear. Something primal. When I looked again, they were gone. I told myself I had imagined them. That the heat played tricks on the eyes. But when I stepped outside that evening, I found the fence gate open. I never leave it open. And next to it, resting on the dry grass, was a single sprig of mint. Its scent was fresh. Too fresh. And I swear the mirror by the staircase caught the door shutting behind me, just a moment before I did. I started locking every door, every window. The mirror by the staircase, I draped with an old bedsheet, its silence too loud. Even so, I felt watched, not in the way of surveillance, but something more intimate. Like I was prey and something patient was studying my habits. The mint sprig I found by the fence hadn't withered. I placed it on the porch railing and each morning, it was still green. Not once did it wilt. On the fifth day, I found a second one, fresh again, placed beside the first. That morning, I ventured to the village. I asked the grocer, a man in his 60s, whose hands shook just slightly, if he knew of anyone walking through the fields. I didn't describe them, not in detail. I only said I'd seen strangers. He stopped stacking potatoes and looked at me for a long time. "You shouldn't stay there alone," he said, voice low. "It's just a house," I replied, trying to smile. "Some houses remember," he murmured. The walk back felt longer, and more silent than I remembered. The woods to my left no longer looked like trees, but like silhouettes holding their breath. That night, I awoke to creaking floorboards. Soft. Measured. As if someone walked barefoot across the hallway. I called out, heart pounding, but no one answered. I waited. The steps stopped. And then, nothing. When I rose the next morning, the bedsheet had fallen from the mirror. I stared at my reflection. My face was pale, my eyes sunken from a sleepless night. But I wasn't alone in the glass. Behind me stood the two strangers. Still hooded, still faceless. One slightly taller than the other. They didn't move. They only stood. My chest tightened. I turned quickly, but the room was empty. In the mirror, they were gone too. That day, I found footprints by the fence. Bare feet. Slightly larger than mine. Leading in, but not out. The old journals began to shift in tone as I read deeper. Past the birdwatching and herb notes, my great-uncle had written about them. He never gave them names. Only called them the Watchers. Said they'd been around since long before he came to live here. That they didn't harm, exactly, but they waited. Chose. Watched. Marked. He believed the house was a threshold. Some places are closer to the other side, he wrote. This is one. I found a final entry, scrawled hastily. I buried the mirror once. It came back. They use it now. They see through it. If you've seen them once, they've already chosen. If they enter, it's too late. I didn't sleep that night. Every knock of the beams settling made me flinch. Every gust of wind against the pane sounded like a whisper. I lay still, barely breathing. And sometime before dawn, I heard the soft tap of fingers, just 3, against the glass of my bedroom window. I live on the second floor. I didn't move. Not even to breathe. The tapping on the window stopped. But the silence that followed was worse. A silence that felt aware. I stayed under the covers until the weak light of dawn bled through the curtains. Then I rose, knees trembling, and crept to the window. There were no marks on the glass. No smudges. But I knew. I knew they had been there. Watching me. Maybe even smiling. I needed answers. Something concrete. Something I could hold in my hands to ground me before I lost the last threads of sense. I tore through the attic, dust coating my arms, cobwebs clinging to my face, until I found it. A small locked box. It had belonged to my great-uncle, the key still tied with brittle string to its rusted handle. Inside were old photographs, pages torn from books, and a small leather journal no bigger than my palm. I opened it, expecting notes about herbs, dates, mundane farm life. Instead, I found names. Dozens of them. Each one was written in the same neat, practiced hand, followed by a date. But not birth dates. No. They were all close together, within summers of each other. I flipped toward the end of the book. The last name written before the ink stopped cold was Julian R. August 9, 2005. My blood ran cold. That was the summer Julian and I ran down the hill together. When we nearly. I never told anyone else. Not really. It was a memory we buried like a dead animal. We never even mentioned the men again. I dropped the journal. My hands were shaking too hard to hold it. I called Julian. First time in 2 years. I didn't care that it was early. He answered on the third ring. His voice was groggy but turned sharp when I asked, "Do you remember that day by the hill?" A pause. Then a sigh, ragged. "I've been dreaming about it all week." I told him what I found. The mirror. The mint. The barefoot prints. The journal. He was quiet. Then he said something I still hear, sometimes, when the wind hisses through the trees. "They don't forget. You and I, we saw them, and we ran. But I think we were marked. You went back. I didn't." I asked if he ever told anyone. "No one would have believed us," he said. I still don't believe it. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in the kitchen with every light on, mirror covered, phone clutched in hand. I read more of my great-uncle's final pages. Some think ghosts are echoes. I think they are watchers, sentinels of a gate we don't understand. They don't chase. They invite. They mimic. And if you say yes, you never leave. The children they took never screamed. That's how we knew. My phone vibrated. A message from an unknown number. It read, "We've saved you a place. Come back to the hill." That was the last straw. I packed that night. But as I zipped my bag, I glanced into the mirror I'd forgotten to cover. They were closer now. I could see their hands. I didn't sleep that night. Not even with every lamp burning and my phone in a death grip. I left before dawn, just as the mist was beginning to curl through the trees like pale fingers reaching for the house. I drove without stopping. Without looking in the mirrors. The rear view was covered with a strip of cloth anyway. I'd done it without thinking. Like some old instinct, or an echo of a warning passed down through blood. I didn't go home. Not to the city. I checked into a small motel 3 towns over. Clean, impersonal, forgettable. The kind of place where nothing follows you. Or so I thought. The dreams started immediately. Not nightmares. No blood. No screaming. But each night I was back on the hill. Not as a child, but as I am now, walking alone, the tall grass swaying. The air always smelled of mint. Always so sweet it turned sour in my throat. Sometimes I see them. The 2 strangers, always just ahead of me. Always walking. And me, always following. I try to stop. I try to turn. But my feet don't listen anymore. Julian called again. He told me he'd been seeing them too. On the subway. In reflections. Once even in a family photo from years ago, 2 tall figures at the edge of the frame, blurred but unmistakable. We don't talk much after that. I think we both knew. Some doors, once opened, never close. Some summers don't end. One morning, I woke with mud on my feet. And a single mint leaf pressed to the pillow beside me. I never went back to the countryside. But the countryside, it came with me. Sometimes, when the city is quiet and the streets are empty, I feel it again, the hush of tall cornfields, the warmth of sunlight on my skin, and a soft whisper just behind me. The sound of bare feet brushing against dry earth. Of someone just close enough to touch, but never quite there. I tried to burn the journal. I thought maybe that would end it. But the pages wouldn't catch. Not even a corner. Now, I keep it sealed in a box beneath my bed. Some nights I hear it rustle. Like someone flipping the pages from the inside. But here's the worst part. I don't remember how the drive ended. I remember the decision to leave. The packing. The dawn light. But after that, I only remember walking. Endless steps through tall grass. The heat. The thirst. The voice that said, "You're almost there." And sometimes, when I wake, I'm not sure if this is the dream. If I ever truly left. Or if I finally said yes. And now I live in the hill. Watching. Waiting. For the next child who says, "We're just looking for mint."